Take a look at this image. As you can see, it's a rat sitting on its hind legs like a squirrel with what looks like a giant pea. This image, along with several others that I'll be showing you in this video, were made by Midjourney, an AI image generator. And the reason why I'm talking to you about these images is because these images were published in a pretty well-respected journal, Frontiers. That's right, these images were put in a scientific paper, made it through peer review, and were actually published in a real journal. It's an absolute joke, so let's talk about it. So I first heard about this story thanks to the Ground News app, who are also sponsoring today's video. If you don't know, Ground News is a website and app that rather than report on the news themselves, instead they gather the world's media in one place and make the bias of that news explicit rather than hidden. So for example, if we look at this story about our AI rat friend, we can see that this story was reported on by 26 different sources with a surprisingly even mix of left, center, and right-leaning publications, which is usually not the case for stories about academic misconduct or academic failures, but nice to see that we can all be united of our hatred of AI nonsense getting through peer review. What I love about Ground News is that you can compare headlines between different media outlets so that you can see how different outlets are talking about the exact same story. For example, if we look at the headline from Vice, we can see that they use the headline, "Study featuring AI-generated giant rat retracted, journal apologizes." Whereas if we look at the Daily Caller, we can see that they went with this title, "Scientific journal tricked into publishing AI-generated paper about rat with massive ... You know. I should also mention that Ground News is available no matter what country you're in, not just the US. So for example, right now I'm on the US edition, and so you can see that right-leaning publications are coded in red and left-leaning publications are coded in blue. But if I was to switch to the UK British edition, then those colors are reversed. So the left-leaning publications would now be red and the right-leaning publications would be blue, which would be more in line with British politics. And not only do the colours change, but the stories I'm seeing are going to be more about local things that are relevant to me here in the UK. So no matter where you are in the world, be sure to sign up for Ground News using my link in the description, ground.news/Pete. If you use my link in the description, you'll get 30% off the Vantage plan, which is the plan that'll give you access to all the features that I just talked about. Thank you, Ground News, for sponsoring today's video. Let's talk more about this AI rat. So this paper was called Cellular Functions of Spermatogonial Stem Cells in Relation to JAK/STAT Signaling Pathway. And it was written by Guo, Dong, and Hao. And as you can see from this image, not only did they import the rat from Midjourney, but they also let Midjourney do the labeling of their diagram as well. And as anyone who has used Midjourney knows, it really struggles to make real words. So does anybody know what disloctal stem cells are? Or testomcells? What about this petri dish of stenom cells? These ones are being scooped up by a spoon. Yummy. Lunch, anybody? And this image of a rat is only figure 1. Have a look at figure 2. This is supposedly a diagram showing the JAK/STAT pathway, but to me it looks more like a children's version of a circuit board, or maybe Willy Wonka's floor plan for a donut factory. Once again, it's filled with nonsense labels. Anyone know what the propraonization stat protems is? Or the resprowization of Laregisor? And finally, here's figure 3 from the exact same paper. I mean, this one looks kind of cool to me. It's like some sort of alien solar system or something, but nevertheless, as you can see, these are all absolute nonsense, but they made it through peer review and they were published, like I said, in an actual, legitimately, decently well-respected journal, Frontiers. So if you needed more proof that peer review is a completely meaningless process, this is pretty clear proof that it does absolutely nothing. It's obvious that whoever was supposed to peer review this paper didn't even take one look at it. But to be honest, I don't blame them. I've talked before about the problems of peer review, one of the biggest ones being, of course, that peer reviewers aren't paid to actually do peer review. They do it for free. It's free labor. And guess what? If you don't pay people to do a good job, a good number of people aren't going to do a good job. But enough about peer review, because I want to talk more about AI, because the rapid development of AI technology is posing a lot of new problems for the academic publishing system, and I want to talk about those in today's video. So let's start by talking about AI image generators like Midjourney, like we just saw. Because while it's pretty funny to laugh at this rat with a huge ding dong being published in a peer-reviewed journal, it's actually quite worrying because AI image generators are getting more and more realistic as time goes on, and the technology is developing at a rapid rate. Right now, the default output from an AI image generator like Midjourney has a pretty distinct style. It's this very high contrast, sort of almost cartoony looking style. And so for people who are familiar with AI image generated content, it's pretty easy to spot. However, as time goes on, this technology is going to get more and more realistic looking at a much faster rate than you might expect. And on top of that, if the people who are prompting the AI image generator are more careful about what output they're looking for, then it's quite likely that they'll be able to get the image generator to make something that actually looks fairly convincing. And that's a big problem because a lot of the time in biological science and medical science in particular, our evidence from experiments is images. And we already see lots of fraud happening in terms of image duplications. That's people copying images from one place and pasting it in another place. That's already a big enough problem, and we have some tools to fight against that, like ImageTwin and the one and only Elizabeth Bick. But even those things aren't able to keep up with the pace and the volume of academic fraud that is happening in the world today. Imagine how much harder it'll be once AI image generators are able to make images that actually look genuinely convincing. Once an AI can generate an image that looks convincing enough, those won't be flagged by software like ImageTwin where it's looking for a duplicate because, well, it's unique. It's a one-of-a-kind image. And some types of image evidence are easier to fake than others. We've talked a lot on this channel about Western blot, which is a pretty common procedure in biological science to test for proteins in a sample. Essentially, they look like this, and the thicker and darker the blot, the more present that protein is in your sample. And there's been lots of cases of people manipulating these blots in their papers. People have been copy and pasting blots all over the place to try and make evidence of things that aren't actually their real evidence. And blots like this are obviously pretty simple images. And in fact, there's already been a case when AI was developed in order to generate fake blots specifically. Like, it was the whole point of this algorithm was to generate fake blots, and this is what they look like. And thankfully, because of, once again, Elizabeth Bick and a few others, this case of the fake AI blots was busted, and they called it the tadpole paper mill because the blots that were generated had a weirdly smooth appearance rather than having the usual smudges and stains that you see on real blots. And so they kind of looked a bit like tadpoles. Also, the background to the blots was identical every single time, so that was a dead giveaway that this wasn't a real blot. But you can see there's not much of a hop and a skip to see how this could be developed and turned into something that is a lot more convincing with just a little bit of tweaking. In fact, I was so convinced that this was easy that I decided to give it a go myself. So if you look at these images that are on screen right now, these are actually images that I generated from DALL-E in about 5 minutes of prompting. It didn't take much for me to get here. I just asked it for realistic looking Western blots with a light grey background, and this is what it put out. Now, obviously, you couldn't just take this image and put it into your paper as is because it's adding a bunch of random stuff around the periphery. I don't really know what it's doing there. But, you know, if you're selective about what parts of this image that you take with a bit of cropping and a bit of Photoshop to blur it a bit, you can create something that's pretty convincing. So this is what I was able to make from my image in, again, about 3 to 5 minutes of work. So to me, that looks pretty convincing as a real Western blot, and I was able to make that in just a few minutes as an amateur. So, you know, if someone who really knows what they're doing, I'm pretty sure could get something that, you know, looks pretty good. I mean, certainly if this can make it through peer review, then, you know, this certainly can too. But it's not only AI image generators that are the problem. Large language models like ChatGPT are also making their way into academic papers worldwide. And, you know, using ChatGPT to help write your paper isn't necessarily a problem. For example, when I'm doing coding or data processing, I find it actually incredibly helpful to use ChatGPT as a co-pilot. It makes my coding a lot better, and that doesn't necessarily make the results of my experiment fraudulent or false or anything like that because I'm using ChatGPT to help me code. It just makes my coding and data processing applications a lot faster. However, the problem comes when you're using ChatGPT to actually help you write the content of your paper, help you to interpret the results, and help write your literature review and so on. ChatGPT, as we know, is very good at making up things, and it makes things up with a lot of confidence, and it won't hesitate to make up a bunch of facts about what it's talking about. And if there's one place where we don't want an AI algorithm to do that, it would be in the scientific record. One of the biggest problems I see with ChatGPT right now when I've tried to use it is that it will confidently cite things that aren't real citations. Like if you ask it, oh, can you write about this particular topic and give me citations for all the points that you make, it'll give you a bunch of citations, but all the citations are completely made up out of nowhere. It'll be citing Nature, it'll be citing science, but when you actually go to click on those links or go click on those articles or you Google those articles, They don't exist. Like, ChatGPT is just made up a bunch of stuff that sounds pretty legit, but it's completely nonsense. And so what I worry is that, all of these papers are going to end up being published in real journals, and they're just going to be citing a bunch of nonsense. And we already know that authors worldwide are using ChatGPT because there have been some pretty hilarious mess ups of people submitting obviously ChatGPT generated content. For example, if you look at this paper on screen right now, this paper at the end of its methods section had this weird extra phrase, regenerate response, which, as you know if you've used ChatGPT, is one of the UI buttons that are at the end of your response. So clearly whoever has submitted this paper has just copied the output from ChatGPT, pasted it into their paper, and submitted it without checking it, and obviously forgot to take out the part that is regenerate response. But even more egregious than that, there have been at least 9 papers that have been published that contain the phrase as an AI language model. And again, if you've used ChatGPT before, you'll know that that's just one of ChatGPT's stock phrases that it likes to use. As an AI language model, I blah, 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 blah. So, it's pretty insane that this stuff is making it through peer review. But again, I'm not surprised because peer reviewers don't actually do a good job. They don't even read the papers that they're supposed to peer review. Another thing that's happening in the world of academia that's honestly quite dystopian is that people are just straight up listing ChatGPT as a co-author. Take a look at this paper here. Like, this person's just put ChatGPT as their co-author on a paper, which I find really weird, right? Like, ChatGPT is a tool. It's a technological tool. Why is it listed as a co-author on your paper? Like, I wouldn't expect authors to write Microsoft Word as a co-author on their paper, but people are writing ChatGPT as one. It seems really weird. So those are just some of the problems that AI is posing for the world of academic publishing and scientific integrity. What do you make of the whole situation? Let me know in the comments below. Personally, I find it pretty concerning. I just want to end this video by saying a massive thank you for all the support recently. Our last few videos have done really well, and I can't thank you enough for all of the amazing support that you've shown the channel. Also, a big thank you to Ground News for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check them out, link in the description. Again, they are literally my favorite way to read the news. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.